Hank Cisco Show. Don't touch that remote. Got an interesting person as a guest. And it's really interesting how I met him and something about him. I didn't know anything about him. So, and he's the most interesting person I've had on this show. And we're going to talk about some good things and how America could get better, how Narson could get better, how Flowertown could get better. Yeah. And so, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today, his name is, tell him your name.
Stan Casacio.
And all right, no, it's Casacio. It's, you spell that, ready? C-A-S-A-C-I-O. And my name is C-I-A-C-C-I-O. So somebody loused up at Ellis Island.
We may be related, I don't know.
Yeah. His mother, my mother, both mothers, so we're related, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So, Stan, tell me how we met.
Well, I think it was you just like my hairdo. That's all.
That was.
Right. I think that's what you
I
really
like that.
You came to.
You got caught in the hair raid.
My wife and I, Diane Cardano Casacio, we do a lot of charity stuff in the neighborhood and try to be involved in our community because I think that's important for everybody to do that. And you came to one of the functions that we had related to our house during Christmas time.
Which Joe Gale?
Joe Gale, our commissioner, County Commissioner Joe Gale was there, and a number of other people. And
John Fox?
John Fox showed up. Of course, I went to school with John.
Yeah,
so I've known John
office.
forever.
Yeah.
And there were a number of other people that we know, mutual acquaintances. And I think you just liked the house, how we had it set up for Christmas and everything, because we have the big Christmas party, which we have initially. We have maybe 40 to 50 kids come. We invite all the kids from the neighborhood and all around. Yeah. We have Santa Claus for the kids. My wife and I put little gifts out for everybody.
We were come to film it. We couldn't do it. I forget what the problem was.
Well, it snowed.
We had no cameras. That's what our cameras.
And it snowed and you had trouble.
We used to have big cameras. See that? So we're having a big fundraiser to get some cameras here. So if you know anybody that wants to donate to help our cameras, some of the cameras are breaking.
Is this where I reach in my pocket
now? Get friends. You know what they say? Some of the cameras are broken. What ain't broke don't work.
Don't work. That's right.
So we were at your house, and John, but it was a highlight of what? Frank Rizzo.
We were doing a Frank Rizzo night, honoring Frank Rizzo, because obviously you knew Frank, and I grew up knowing Frank Rizzo back in the 60s and the 70s, and he was definitely a force with the city. And I looked really hard, Frank. There was a picture of me with one of my buddies, Wayne Posner, who's now the vice mayor of Jupiter, Florida.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
And we went to Palumbo's. You remember old Palumbo's down in South Philly? Great place.
Well, you would be in, and somebody say, Frank Rizzo's downstairs. Everybody come down here.
Right.
Yeah, he had
so Frank was there, and as you recall, he was about 6'30". He was just a huge guy. So he sees, we had bumped into each other before, so he sees these two young guys, me and Wayne. We were young then. You remember how it was when we were young?
You're still young. What are you talking about?
And he just enveloped both of us and just grabbed us both, hugged us in. We took pictures of him with him, and that was quite an honor. He was just a very giving person.
Oh, yeah.
So we honored him. You know, my father used to say the good's always forgotten.
Right.
People it's easier for people to remember the negative of things. Right. If we as a nation remembered all the positive stuff that people do, we'd be much better off.
More so today than ever. Right.
Frank protected his city. He protected his people, no matter who they were. And that's what we were
let me say this. Stan, you are a successful man. You're very charitable. You work with the community. You ran for Congress.
Yeah.
The other guy got a couple more votes than you.
Yeah.
But you're in a dressing room, and you're going to start working out, getting in shape, because we need you. We need somebody like you in politics, you know.
Well, I believe that you must always challenge ideas. You must always reach out beyond yourself and try to force ideas. You can look at my feet. I haven't walked on water lately, but either has anybody else. So you shouldn't fear having ideas. You shouldn't fear challenging things. And we often get trapped, and this is one of the issues I've always had, is whatever party you're in, there always seems to be the establishment in those parties, and they want to control everything and everybody. And that's not the way it should happen. We need ideas. We need ideas from young people. We need ideas from all over, and that's how we get to be better.
Well, I know you have the backing of a lot of good people, and I know I like you, and if you ever run for anything, I'll be there for you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
and now, being successful, how did you get started? And
how did I get started? Well, Hank, you'll relate to this. You got to have an old world Italian father who wasn't afraid to use the back of his hand and always made sure we were up in the morning and we were doing something. Yeah. I mean, instead of doing baseball on the weekend or playing with the kids, it was let's go to the job. So we were always on jobs. I remember the first job I ever had with my father. We were on a job, and he gave me a hammer, and he wanted me. He was construction. He was a construction. He's Italian. That's what we do.
Yeah. What else? That or shoemaker.
Right.
My father was a shoemaker. We all worked in the shoe shop.
So he gave me a hammer, and he gave me boards, and there were a bunch of nails in the boards. And my job was to pull the nails out and straighten them because he would reuse them.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my first job that I had with him. That was my first job I had with him, was to do that.
So you straightened out nails.
Yeah, straightened
out nails. Now you're going to run for office, and you're going to straighten out a lot of things.
Well, I'm always looking to make things better. We've got,
I like that line. You're looking to make things better.
Yeah.
You're not trying to change anything. You're not trying to take anything away, but make it better. That's great, All right, now, what do you do now?
Well, I've been in construction development. My brother, who since recently passed away, and my brother-in-law, who just passed away too, we did a lot of development, shopping centers, office buildings, apartment buildings, things of that nature.
What do you mean, you design them, or you?
Yeah, we have our design.
Oh, you're an architect,
I'm not an architect, but we have architects. My daughter, we have my sister.
Oh, you have put a plan,
and Steve Friedman, who's a partner of ours. He's also one of the architects in our construction department. So we'll do design and build for people. We'll do design for tenants inside, interior fit-ups and things of that nature. And then we do out in construction. We'll get the zoning, do the financing, do the management, do the ownership in many cases. So we do a full line of stuff in that field. And my father used to say, you don't want to set the world on fire, you just want to create a little spark.
That's all.
And that's what we try to do. We try to put little sparks here and there.
How old was your dad when he passed away?
My dad was 73 when he passed away.
Yeah, that's young.
And he died the way I'd like to die. In love, next to the woman he loved. So that was my father.
Well, I don't know when I'm going to go. I'm 94. Well, when you ring the bell, like a box, the bell rings, I'll start fighting, or I'll go up to heaven. My wife is up there waiting for me.
Yeah, don't worry. So that's probably why you're still here. She doesn't want you up there yet.
All right, Stan, tell me something about taxes or anything. Okay, this show, just like John Doyle said, it's information, entertainment, and people would like to know something about the taxes. Everything's on TV. They got President Trump is about the taxes. Is this a good thing?
Well, let's take it from a very close-in community level that we can see. My wife, Diane Cardano, has a very active residential real estate office. In that office, we have a lot of seniors who are empty nesters, want to sell their houses, but in many cases, they don't want to sell their house. But the reason why they have to sell their house, they can't afford to live there because they're on fixed income and their taxes keep on going up. The school taxes.
Expenses, water, electric.
But mostly the taxes, especially the school taxes. So one of the things that I've advocated for, and I've been really pushing for, is that when you become a senior citizen and you start collecting Social Security, your real estate taxes should be capped. Especially your school taxes should be capped at what the last, and that's it. And as long as you're in that house, that's where they stay at that time when you start collecting Social Security. That way, because you've paid 40, 50 years into your schools, you don't have any kids. At what point do you say enough's enough?
Yeah.
The responsibility has to be on those new people. And part of the problem is we seem to have a society that always wants to reach out into someone else's pocket. And that's not the way it should be. I've also been an advocate for school choice, for people to have the voucher system so they can send their kids to whatever schools they want to send to.
Right.
So we have competition. I fully believe in competition. I think the biggest thing is people fear capitalism, but yet of all the history of all the governments out there that you've ever seen, it has been capitalism that has got us to where we are today. If you look at governments in the past that were controlled by theocrats, or governments controlled by kings and aristocracy, or centrally controlled governments that are run by dictators and things like that, they have consistently failed. The only societies that have existed that have been successful are those free societies that allow for growth and economic growth in a freewheeling, spiritual and a spirited type of way.
Right.
Because once you restrict that freedom to develop ideas and thoughts, you have no society at all. You go into the malaise of a society.
Just floating along, that's all.
Right. So my big thing on taxes is directed more toward the senior citizens, and to give them, they've paid their dues. Many of them sacrificed in standing up for our country, have served in the military. I served 6 years in the military. Yeah. I was a battery sergeant, 105 howitzers.
Oh, yeah.
Pulling that
well,
lever.
I always have to tell us out there, you know, I got a medal when I was in the Army. I saved my whole company. I shot the cook.
You shot
all right, that's an old,
well,
what you used to tell me that, Dave Zinkoff used to be, he's the one that told that joke. I stole it from him.
Well, I will tell you a quick story. Every cook that we ever had was a little crazy. So you might have been not too far off.
That's why they get brioche. Brioche is like
the old Italian remedy.
Seltzer, like Italian Seltzer, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, I want a little bit more about senior citizens. You know, we're a lot of senior citizens in this area. There are a lot of nursing homes, a lot of assisted livings. You know, what is a good thing? If you want to give a little bit of information, what they can do to help themselves or whatever. Is there anything out there that people are not using or not aware of?
Well, there are a lot of different choices out there today in that field, because the over 60 group of people, or over 55, is a large group of us out there. Now I'm over the 55 group, quickly catching up to you. But
94.
But you have to look at the choices. See what your budgets are. And I'll do, besides being a developer, I'm also a real estate broker and an appraiser. I have a broker's appraiser license. So sometimes I'm set there just talking to seniors that have come in the office saying, what is your goal? What is your end game? Do you want to travel? What do you want to do between now and the day? And that is very important. And a lot of people don't think of that stuff. They don't want to think of that stuff. And you have to. And you have to think about that stuff, because that sets the path that you go on. Now, you can take a couple of lefts and rights along that path, but at least have a direction of where you want to go. Once you determine that, then finding those places that match up with what you want. Do you want to be in Florida? Do you want to be in a nice community? What's your budget look at? Look at that asset. To many people, a house is the biggest asset they will ever own. So that asset has to allow them to be able to enjoy that path they want to take. And that's really important. So just selling a house or going to a real estate person is not the way to do it. You have to sit and talk to somebody about your goals and then how to get to those goals. And that's really important.
Like I say, your phone number and will be on the screen. If anybody wants to give you a phone call, find out.
That'd be great to talk about it.
You know, and before we get into any national things, I just want to
can't wait to get into national stuff.
Tell me a little bit more about growing up.
Growing up. Well, I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, Cotman in the Boulevard.
What kind of school? What schools did you go to?
Well, I went to Catholic schools. I got beat up by the nuns. That's for sure.
How many times did nuns give you a shot?
I don't want to talk about all the times.
Well, you know,
but there was quite a few.
One nun. She said backhand, and her name was Sister Mary Perpetual Pain. Boom, boom. But
I wouldn't, looking back, I would not give up that Catholic school education that I had.
yeah.
You know.
And what high school did you go to?
Well, I went to Bishop McDevitt for 2 years, but back then, when I went to high school, Cardinal Doherty High, if you remember Cardinal Doherty, was one of the largest high schools in the world.
I know.
There were thousands and thousands of kids. So at Bishop McDevitt,
Which was a bit smaller.
smaller, in my classes, I had academic classes. So in my science class, we'd have 50 kids in a class because there were so many kids. My father finally said, hey, listen, I'm paying all these taxes in Cheltenham.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you to Cheltenham High School because I knew a lot of the
Yeah,
guys from. So
good.
I went to Cheltenham High School. I graduated from Cheltenham.
Yeah, that's a great school.
It was a great school. My claim to fame is Reggie Jackson
Yeah,
was
I
in my
think,
class.
The Prime Minister of Israel went to
Well, his brother was in my class, Yanni. Yanni was killed in Entebbe. He led the raid on Entebbe, if you remember when the terrorists took over the plane and everything else. But I knew Yanni was in several of my classes. He was a born leader. He was great to me,
great.
and a wonderful, wonderful man. Brilliant, photographic memory, brilliant man.
And what college you go to?
I went to Penn State, and then we had this little thing called Vietnam, which forced me to graduate. I went to Temple, graduated from Temple.
Yeah. So when I went into your house, and I've been in a lot of homes and everything, but I never saw the decorations and things, and how you have like a little stairway that goes downstairs. You got some waterfalls and all beautiful. What did you do? Get somebody to design that? You come up with it, or what?
Well,
Whose
this
idea
was
is that?
well, the architect for this particular property was really an artist, but I had actually thought I wanted to be an architect myself. So I worked in an architect's office one summer, and I have a problem sitting still. So it was not my bag to sit still. In any event, so I knew that wasn't me. So basically, I wanted to think about concepts that I enjoyed in the property. I like open spaces. So in that house, you didn't see any real small rooms. Everything was open because I used steel.
Like it's here, double doors, and there. Then
I used steel framing instead of wood framing so that I could cover larger distance. And I didn't want to have a bunch of humidifiers in the house, so we put a pond in, and that acts as a humidifier. And we created something that I think people should be more of. You want to have a nice approach, people to be engaged, but you want to invite people into your heart so that they're interested in you. And the house was always set up like I like to meet people like you. When you meet, you make you're an interesting person, but the more you get to meet Hank Cisco, the more you love the guy.
Yeah.
And that's why you have this great TV show, because you're a great guy to know.
29 years on this job.
So to me, a house should say something about that. So when you come into my house, it invites you to continue to go through.
I was very much impressed, and
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
And your wife was very sociable.
No, she fell in love with you.
Yeah,
She
I
fell
thought
in love.
you'd bring her around here.
No, I get jealous. I'm sorry, I would be jealous. I would be jealous.
What is a good thing for a high school student now? Some are seniors, are ready to go to college. What is a good thing to start preparing themselves? Get like math, English, this, business. What's a
Well, I think the biggest fear I have with young people today, and I remember my schooling and my kids, is the challenge for young people today is to try to keep an open mind about things. Don't get pigeonholed into one ideology.
Yeah.
No one, as I said, there's nobody that I know of that's walked on water lately since someone did it about 2,000 years ago. So you have to understand that. If nobody challenged ideas, we'd still think the world is flat today. Identity politics, we've got to get away from identity politics.
What do you mean by that? Explain that.
Well, here's what I think. I think Martin Luther King said it the best. And growing up with that in school and stuff like that, his speech about the content of the person's heart and soul is what we should be looking for. That's why I talked about it's nice to make a nice presentation.
Right.
but it's also nice to get invited inside that person.
Yeah, well, that could, for somebody, in other words, if you're sitting in a movie theater, and somebody starts clapping, everybody's clapping, you know what they're clapping about, right?
Right.
So you just clap, you don't know what you're clapping about. So what you're saying is that find out who's
Question.
clapping, why he's clapping. Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is challenge yourself.
Right.
Think out of the
What do you
box.
mean by that?
Well, you got to think out of the box. Just don't go along for the ride. Think about how to be more creative. How can you do something better?
Think about it.
And when you that is how human beings got to where they are today, because somebody needed to get a better fishing rod, or somebody needed to create a better weapon to go hunting.
Yeah.
Somebody needed to do something better for medical purposes. So there was always people challenging the idea to think about something else to get to some other point.
Yeah.
And that's, young people should not get pigeonholed. They should be creative. They should keep their minds open, and they should challenge the thought process that's out there.
And today, the great opportunity for women today, you know, I know when I first, 1951, I started in Norristown Police Department, I think, I don't know of any police departments that had any women on the police department.
No.
You know, and then they start getting women. Now you got the chief of police from Atlanta, women, Washington, different, you know, chiefs of police.
Right, I
Before they
know.
couldn't even get policemen. So, and then as far as the FBI, as far as intelligence and the Secret Service, women are being used a lot.
Well,
so I say that, you know, just don't go to college to find a husband. Get an education.
Well, I've often said this, that, you know, when we were living back in the caveman days, women are obviously the weaker sex on a physical statute basis. Men, all we had to do was grunt and throw a few punches. Women had to use their whole brain, because they had to make sure that they anticipated danger, how to exist in that world. So women have a lot more practice in using their whole brain as opposed to men. Right. So I believe women are innately more intuitive, more intelligent in many ways than men are, and they see things that we don't see.
My wife used to do all the taxes, this, that, all the money and everything. I would say,
Yeah, here's the check, you take care of it, you know.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, each person, a man and a woman, adds something to the mix. We're here for a reason. We were created to make things better together, and it's a lot more fun with women and men together.
All right, let's talk about national.
Oh, national. Where do you want to start there?
Not too much. We're going to talk about politics. What do you think?
Politics is the sport of every day, it seems like, anymore. And I always say, if you put three people together, you got politics, because there's always somebody trying to convince the third person to go along with them.
Always,
So
watch that guy that's patting you on the back. He's looking for a soft spot to stick the knife in, right?
So the reality is, we as people should not fear politics. It's in our nature to do that. No. What we have to fear is those people who want to stifle political thought processes into one way or the other. Identity politics, which I'm really totally against, because when you start that down the path, you shut people down, you shut the discussion down, but that's what a lot of people want to do. I think judges should not be ruling from the bench. I believe that they have given a set of guidelines, and those guidelines have to be stay in those guidelines, and to not create stuff. I think judge shopping is one of the worst things that could be done today. You know, when you shop, when you think about the Ninth Circuit of the Ninth Circuit federal judges, they go there and then it always gets overturned in the Supreme Court. They got the worst record of all. To me, there's something wrong with that process. It wastes a lot of people's time and energy. So and money, to say that. Look what's happening in the FBI. The FBI is supposed to be this nonpartisan, non-group of people that protect us from ourselves.
For international and everything,
But they're supposed to protect us from ourselves.
And
now they have become as corrupt as anybody else. Something went wrong. And I don't care which party is talking out there. Both parties should be involved in cleaning that up, because it can happen either way.
It shouldn't be
done that way.
Yeah, you don't protect a bad situation. Okay, now, I don't want to talk about, get too deeply involved. I'm a Republican, right?
Yep.
But if I have a good Democrat going to run, I'll vote for him, you know.
Yeah.
But I grew up, I guess, being a Republican, and I'm still a Republican. And but like I say, I have this Facebook and all. My God, some of my best friends now, they're saying some mean things there. Saying, well, I don't even know how to answer them, you know. So I'm not going to do anything. I don't know what the scoop is.
Well, you know, I've tried not to get too riled up on Facebook or on Twitter, although I have responded on a few questions. But I try always to respond with a reasoned approach to responses to things that people may say. I'll tell you, it's very troubling what's going on. And I think what you got to do is you got to look at history. If I could have made money being a history teacher, I would have been a history teacher. Because in history, you may change the dynamics a little bit, but basically there's a consistency through it. So if you look at history, what man has done, they generally do the same mistake, only in a little bit more updated way. But I believe that open dialogue, I believe news stations should give both sides of the equation. The people that are of a political bent should say, hey, I'm political and I believe this, and you understand where their positions are. But basic news should be, everything should be included. I think that Mr. Trump, our President Trump, when you look at the statistically, he gets 90% bad coverage.
Oh my God.
Which, wait a minute, I don't care. I mean, there's a lot of things that are positive that are happening. The business community is a perfect example of that, and people's wages and everything are going up, and the housing is unbelievable. People, it's now, oh my God.
In that business, you know,
oh my God, it's going up. Even the vacancies, which have been huge in the office building area, are starting to get taken up. The vacancies are going down in office space, which is a real sign the economy's taking off. So there are a lot of positive things, and there's no way that 90% of it's bad. ISIS and all the other things that have been doing good. So there's got to be more to the equation than just 90%
well,
bad.
You know, I think people should be more supportive because we have someone in North Korea that has enough ammunition or whatever to almost destroy the United States. I mean, and they got the bomb to the land in California, Chicago, you know.
Well, if there's any of your listeners who want to read a really good book, it's called In the Garden of the Beast by Eric Larson.
What's the name of it? In
the Garden of the Beast by Eric Larson. And it's the journals of the ambassador to Germany from 1932 to 1937. He was the American ambassador to Germany. And he goes through a transition where the State Department was telling him when he first went over there, because he was a professor, a history professor, very big Roosevelt supporter, a very progressive liberal individual, had gone to school in Germany, knew the German people, knew the language very well, but was not a politician at all. So they told him, look, go to Germany, just tell the Nazis we want to be their friends, that we don't want to bother them at all. So he's going with that idea because he had this wonderful feelings about the German people, and he goes there. He's there no more than about 2 years, and he's telling the State Department, hold on a minute, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
And they kept on telling him the same thing. And you remember about Winston Churchill, great movie out right now, Darkest Hour. But Winston Churchill in the early 30s was saying this guy Hitler's a bad guy, and they were telling him he was a warmonger, he was crazy, and everything else. What you just said about North Korea, it can be related back to that. You have a bully. He's killed his brothers. He's killed people. He's executed people in the most vile way. Look what he did to that young student, 22 years old, for taking a sign down. Basically murdered him. So
he was in a hotel, like, you
so
know.
you're going to tell me that you're going to try to make a deal with this guy? There's no way. And I think Trump's got it right. There's a point where you say to bullies, that's it.
You know, I don't think people realize today, we've been very fortunate. Every war, first, second World War, they were all over there. We didn't get bombed. We didn't have cities destroyed.
And when you have during the war, I happened to be that when I first went for examination, I got turned down, and then they got me the second time. But I was home. My mother, my father, they about worrying about. You had to put the lights out because of possible pain. You couldn't get no gas. You had some of this, everything. Your whole life changes. They don't realize when a country goes to war.
War is a terrible thing.
And we want to stay out of it.
But there's a product that causes that. If you look at the history, and that's why I say go back to history.
Talking about history, let me do that. I just thought of it. Harry Truman, what's new? The history we haven't read.
Yes.
And that's what it's about. Go ahead.
But that history has been pre-written before a little bit. If you take a look at World War I, the Germans were bombing the U-boat bombing of our torpedoing our boats, and that led us into the war. But that's because they figured America was not. We were this disjointed country, all different people. Because you got to remember, you're dealing with homogeneous neighborhoods. With Germany, all the German, and the French were all French. We were everybody. So they never figured we could get together. So they didn't think much of us, and that's why they did it. Go into World War II. The Japanese specifically said that the Americans were immoral. They were a no good country. They have no concept of, they're afraid they'll run away from us. So let's go attack them. We'll get done with them. End of story.
Yes.
And of course, as you well know, again, 9/11 is another perfect example of how the Muslim extremists perceived America.
Right.
So we have to stand up to these people right now, and that is like Theodore Roosevelt said: "Walk softly, but carry a big stick."
Prevention.
Walk softly, carry a big stick.
All right, now. Fly, eagle, fly.
Fly, eagle, fly.
Come on, what are we going to do? What do you think? Make a prediction.
Well,
score. I know what the score is going to be before the game even starts.
I got to tell you one quick story.
Go ahead.
Growing up, we lived next door to Bert Bell, the commissioner of football. Now, to you people out there that don't know, Bert Bell was the original commissioner of the football.
Yeah.
And he was a graduate of University of Pennsylvania. He owned the Eagles at one time. He actually put together the Eagles in Pittsburgh during World War II. They were called the Pitt Steelers or something, the Eagle Steelers or something like that. But he was in there, and he was a friend of my father. We lived next door to him. So as a little boy, I'd climb the wall because we had these houses down the shore, and we shared a wall. We climbed the wall, and Mrs. Bell was always nice to me. And I'd go in, and Mr. Bell had this big desk. And back when I was a young man, you didn't have push-button phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you had several phone lines, you would bring another phone in there. So he had like 6 phones on his desk. To me, as a little kid, that was like, holy cow, we still were dealing with a party line. So, and he had a blackboard. And he was on the phone figuring, and I wasn't allowed to write on the blackboard because he was figuring out who was going to play who that season on this blackboard in the house down the shore. And that was how it was done. Yeah. So Mr. Bell, I knew Mr. Bell for a long time, and he gave my father. He gave my father season tickets, and as a young man, when the Eagles would lose, I would cry the whole bit. And so I have always been very passionate about the Eagles. And I think sports is entertainment. Politics should not be in sports.
You're right. Well,
should not be in sports, and I don't want to.
I'm going to make a prediction. Everybody, ready?
Go ahead.
The score. I know what the score is going to be before the game even starts.
I want to
0-0. It's going to be 0-0, right? Before the game starts. Oh well. Almost.
All right. The thing. I just want to say.
30 seconds.
Well, let me just say one thing about Foles. The quarterback for the. Here's a guy that was always been a fairly good player. I think he was MVP. Thinking about quitting, but he's a very religious guy, and he came back in. So anybody who thinks that they're down can always come back if they focus on what their goal is. What's that path?
Right.
And I think if the Eagles win, it's going to be because he had this ability to reach out beyond himself.
Right. Don't lose the fight in the dressing room.
Don't ever lose the fight.
In the dressing room.
Yep,
Right. Get out there and win or lose it in the ring.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Right. So, I want to just say thank you to Sink Cohen and his wife, Sharon. What a great fundraiser for the Lukens family. The 2 children died in a fire. And it was at the casino. It was a packed house. 100 tables, 10 at a table, and it was a sellout. And they asked me to go up and say a couple words, but he did a great job, him and his wife. They put that thing together. And so I just want to thank you so much.
Can I mention one more thing?
Go ahead.
I always believed in community. Several years ago, I started an award for White Marsh. People in White Marsh have done great things for the community. We call it the John O. Totten Award. And February.
Soccer?
No, it's John O. Totten Award. It's for people in our community who have done wonderful things, who've set themselves apart, given them themselves. February 1st, anybody's interested, call my number, 215-651-1042.
Okay.
And you're welcome to come in, and we're going to be honoring a wonderful gentleman who has
Where's it
given
gonna
a
be
lot.
held?
It's going to be at my house.
Oh, your house. Okay.
Yeah, which would be a blast. You're invited.
Yeah,
Come
all
on,
right,
bring your
well,
camera crew.
We'll put that on, put it on Facebook and we'll get it there.
We'll
you
put
know,
on the
and,
camera crew.
I think, and John Doyle's gonna try to put the pictures I took, my daughter Joanne took at your house on Christmas. And as you know, John and I, you see, we only got 2 small cameras. You see all them cameras, all broke. So we're making a little fundraiser, so if you know somebody that wants to make a little donation for our
Well,
things,
we'll make an announcement that night.
wanna
and
make a
we'll
donation,
make
let
an
me know.
announcement that night, and we'll see if we can get a few more donations for you.
What's that?
We'll make an announcement that night, and there's some wonderful people there. They may be willing to donate some money to
All
the
right,
camera
okay,
crew
I'll
here.
be there. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing us to come into your home. And I would say that my man, Stan, a la salud, and
La
that
salud.
means to your health. If you got your health, you got everything. And here's a little token appreciation.
Thank you.
Now, see that hanging in your house? Oh my God.
I'm going to put a hook.
Gonna
It's
be
going to be on our
something
Christmas
different, right?
on our Christmas tree.
Put it on the mailbox.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for allowing us to come in here, and may God bless each and every one. So, until we meet again, keep bobbing and weeping, slip and slide, and keep your chunks off the canvas. Thank you. And don't forget, make a little donation so we can get some cameras here that'll work. We can't do any singing or dancing because we don't have the equipment to do it. So, God bless you. That's it. Grazie. Thank you. Stay there, right there. Don't move.